Fantastic. So welcome to 6 Steps to a Better Business. I'm going to ask you guys, if you don't mind, share, and we don't have to put it in the chat box, just do it. Introduce yourselves, your name, your company. What's most important for you to learn today? Kurt, you want to go first?
Sure. John, Steve, my name's Kurt Schneid. I'm a video producer for businesses, helping them articulate who they are, what they do, and what separates them from their competition virtually through videos on the internet. My new company name is Access Studios, and I'm at Kurt at accessstudios.com. I have an opportunity now to take my 25 years of experience and then really grow into something more national. And so I'm looking to take the foundation of what I've built and then expand upon it and make it available to a ever increasing baby boomer market that's entering, the older adult phase. And so I'm working with a company, and I'd like to create an online platform for aging adults to learn and process the Aging in Place program, specifically when it comes to oral histories and memories and being able to share experiences with friends of theirs from yesterday or yesteryear in a social media type platform. And I think it's something that baby boomers can do and will really enjoy doing, and then connecting with people, whether they've talked to them last week or haven't talked to them in 30 years. I think it's a really interesting thing to be able to make those type of videos.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kurt. Yeah, you're maybe right. And national is an awesome scale. John.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is John Partridge, and I have several ventures, primarily Honeydew Today, where it's our mission to be America's handyman. And we're a scaling business, so I'm always interested in how people think about that. I have been a lifelong entrepreneur, and I'm always interested in building concepts and solutions to problems in the marketplace. But there is, and it always shifts and changes the methodology of how businesses grow and scale and what metrics they should be hitting and, where things happen. And that's why I'm on here today. I always value Steve's judgment on, what's going on and how we should be thinking about things. And sometimes the smallest kernel of information can lead to a lot.
That is true. Thank you, John. I'm actually going to show you a formula. If I haven't shown you at some time in the past, I'm going to show you a formula that's a fantastic scaling up tool that both of you can use that can be treated as the financial scaling up engine, and then everything else builds around that as a core chassis. So if that's fantastic, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce us a little bit, what's Action Coach and who am I, and why I've got some degree of qualification to be here. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about mindset, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a why this has gotten to be important to me, and then we're going to jump into some real meat of mechanics and ideas of how to make stuff happen in a business. Action Coach is a franchise, a global franchise operation. We operate in about 70 countries. We've got more than 1,000 coaching offices. It started up in Australia. It was founded by Bradley Sugars in Australia, Brisbane, Australia to be specific. Expanded to Indonesia and New Zealand early from there. Gone to the United States and Canada. We are currently operating in 70 different countries, more than 70 different countries. We operate with a common vision of world abundance through business re-education. And that implies more than just the owner's abundance, because the more abundance the owner has, the more people are employed. The more people that are employed, the more abundance the world will see. And so our job as franchisees is to expand our ability to help business owners expand their businesses, their personal wealth, and the wealth of their employees, if you will. The systems I'm going to show you today are systems that were initially developed in '93 and have grown with 1,000 coaching offices. We currently work with about 15,000 businesses every week. And that means we are constantly improving and refining these. So what I'm going to show you is where we've gotten to and what we feel is a very powerful platform to take a business wherever you guys want to take it. And with a national scale vision, you certainly have the tools in front of you here to do that. Of course, the devil's in the details. All right, personally, I grew up in Rochester, New York. I was actually born in Washington, D.C., but I grew up in Rochester, New York. I've got an electrical engineering degree from Clarkson University. And 22 years later, I decided it was time to have a business degree and got an MSBA from Bucknell University. So I practiced being an engineer before I practiced being a business person. Since then, I have spent, and before coaching, I spent 20 years running business units for large manufacturing corporations. The business units I typically ran were customer service businesses. In some of those, most of those cases, it was for a manufacturing company. In some of those cases, it was manufacturing and construction. Most of the equipment that we sold required installation and construction. I wound up selling parts, services, and upgrade services for many of those business units. The last business unit I grew 300% in 3 years. The principles I'm going to show you today are the very principles I used to do that. I did not know Action Coach at that time, but I kind of worked out the methodologies over those 20 years, and the difference between them is very minuscule. What they did is they figured out how to put it into a systematic approach. I was doing it from my gut. And I kind of, as an engineer, I kind of like the systematic approach because it's repeatable. My gut was not repeatable. So we're going to go on from there. And that's going to be the basis of some of the things I'm going to share today. My goal is to reward you guys investing your time with techniques and methodologies to increase your sales and profits, free up your time, because time is the most important resource, and help you create amazing teams to make this go forward for you. And that's going to be a core of this. So let's start with a little bit of mindset. That dot, that yellow dot, think of that as a point of power. So there's below the point of power and there's above the point of power. So below the point of power, we get behaviors and activities that look like blame, excuses, denial. Have you guys ever seen people that can engage in those kinds of behaviors?
Sure.
What does that get them?
Nowhere.
Gets them nowhere. We tend to think of those as disempowering kind of behaviors. And we want to call that out. We want to make sure that when we see those kinds of behaviors, we get on top of them immediately, because allowing those to continue on holds us back a lot. Alternatively, taking ownership, taking responsibility to do what's necessary, and holding ourselves accountable to getting the right stuff done the right way. What does that help us do?
Succeed.
Absolutely. We tend to think of those as empowering behaviors, and we want to make sure that we reward people, either ourselves or people in our team, for engaging in empowering behavior as opposed to disempowering behavior. Once we accept ownership of that principle, we can look at failure as a lab experiment that didn't produce the results we were looking for. So what? All that means is it's an opportunity to change how we did what we did, try it a different way, see what outcome that produces for us. So it's simply a lab experiment. The only failure is the failure to participate, do something, find out if it works, measure the results, and see a better way to do it. And by the way, there's no such thing as good enough. It can always be better. The question might be which things to focus on, but it can always be better. There's always another way. There's always another idea. And by the way, if it worked for somebody else, if we can't make it work, it's only because we haven't figured out how. That means these two words in that order are probably in our way. So once we feel we know something, it's probably holding us back. And we want to get that phrase out of our vocabulary and replace it with, isn't that interesting? It's data. How do I use that data? It might be a completely foreign way to approach something, but how do I use that data to learn a better way for myself? There's something there. I may not understand it all, but there's something there that can help me. How is it that that person made it work and I haven't been able to make it work yet? There's something there missing and I need to learn it. And I think that's perhaps one of the more important techniques, is to sit down and understand there's more to learn about everything. Now, it isn't all just about learning, it's about doing. And that's where that failure to participate piece comes in. We have to try it, measure it, and find a better way. So what I hope to share is a few BFOs, a few blinding flashes of the obvious. I'm going to speculate. Most of what I'm going to show you, you've seen in some form or another. What I hope to do is to put it together in a way that you can make use of, that you're not currently using, and not using it that way. First question is, I'm going to ask you guys, if you're not using your phone as the viewing device, to shut it off. In my observation, most business owners only ever have a job. Now, what's a job? What's a characteristic of a job?
A regular set of duties that you're responsible for executing on a daily, weekly, monthly process, without the freedom to go where you want, do what you want.
It's good. Yeah. What else?
You know, up until recently, Virginia, in the Virginia Code, classified employee relations and employment law as master-servant law. And so really you are the servant to a master if you have a job.
Okay. I'm going to throw one more in there. All true. Every bit of what you guys just said is true. I'm going to throw one more. And I think this is the more important consideration. For a job, you only earn a wage comparable with the amount that you worked. You're paid for the hours you put in. True? And this is where it starts, that I started observing this before I became a coach. In the prior lives that I worked, selling products, many products that we sold were manufactured or supplied by other people. And I got to know some of those people, some of the owners of those companies fairly well. And I discovered if they didn't work, they didn't earn a living. That kind of made them a servant of their job, of their business. So if you want to use the language that John shared, they became a slave in a way to their business. And I kind of think of that as just over broke as compared to what a business can be. So if you think about an Elon Musk kind of approach to a business, or Bill Gates or Stephen Jobs kind of an approach to a business, that's an entirely different level of wealth. And that is available to any business owner that chooses to look at his business a little bit differently. Thoughts? Make sense?
I'll go with that.
Okay. It's a different mindset. It's a different paradigm about business. And I want to approach today from this perspective. I'm going to go back to some numbers. Based on my conversations with brokers, and I've gotten to know a few of them, there are about 6 ways to get out of a business. One's to sell it to the family. One's to sell it to management. One's to sell it to a third party. Fourth one is to become an absentee owner, and then you can sell it to a third party. It's a more advanced version of it. One's to liquidate in a planned kind of basis, to basically walk away and sell stuff. And the other is the owner dies, the business gets liquidated in a fire sale kind of way. Those are 6 different price points. Which one do you think is the most valuable to the owner?
Number 3.
Or 4.
Number 4. Let's talk about that a little bit. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that if you're trying to sell it to family or management, it becomes, there's some different aspects to that that doesn't click really well. The third party seems to be something that you can control a little bit better. And I think that's the one that I would select.
Okay, let's talk about it a little bit. If you sell it to family or you sell it to management, there's a bit of a cop-out going on. You haven't elected to build the business out to be sellable at its full value. Same thing with number 3, in a way. And in all 3 of those cases, the owner usually winds up tied to the business for an extended period of time before he's going to get final payment. Because most of the business is still in his head at that stage. Now, I said I wanted to tell some stories. I mentioned some suppliers that I worked with. One of those suppliers was a sheet metal manufacturing business out in Iowa that I recall working with. He was a fantastic guy, had a fantastic business, and made some fantastic stuff for us. Now, when I say sheet metal, I'm talking about 1/4-inch alloy metal. In many cases, we were working with some fairly sophisticated temperatures and with flue gas. So it had to be a little bit alloy so that the corrosion rates would be down at those temperatures. He was getting to a point where he wanted to retire. He passed it off to his son. And boy, I'll tell you, the response rate of that business went down very, very fast. And we depended heavily on that business. Now, I can't speak about his other customers, but I know I sure wanted him back. And sure enough, about a year later, 1.5 years later, he was back. He was back because his son didn't really have the same passion and wasn't invested in understanding how to make this business run. He had to come back to keep it running. I saw the same thing happen in a way with a business that my uncle inherited from his father, he actually grew it massively. He and his son wanted out. He sold it and it went down very fast. He wound up buying it back and rebuilding it. I've seen this over and over and over. Those are just a couple of stories. If you really want wealth, building it out to become an absentee owner, meaning you don't have to be there because everything about the business is in other people's heads. And in fact, it's not in their heads, it's on paper. And therefore it can be trained to anybody. Allows you to be earning dividends and sell at the highest multiple when you're ready to sell. So you can keep it and take a passive income, or you can sell it at the time that you're ready and it becomes like a stock transaction. Thoughts? Does that make sense? It's a different way of thinking. Sets the goals a slightly different place. I'm going to go back to the numbers I talked about a little bit ago. I mentioned that 28 million data points that the IRS publishes. Of course, the IRS doesn't know anything other than revenue and whether it's running or not running. No, they know profit, but that's about, they know the revenue is the key that they know here. 96% of businesses never make it past 1 million before they shut down. 0.4% make it past 10. And the reason 10 was important is because 10 is a really good place for getting into a zone that a business owner can sell at a good multiple and make it be an absentee owner kind of arrangement.
Ones that are the 0.4%,
Mm-hmm.
what's the success rate on that?
Say that again, Jeff. What does that mean?
Yeah, what's the success rate on those that reach that level?
That I cannot answer. I do not know. I will tell you the other number that comes off that same list of data. 17,000 of the 28 million made it past 50 million revenue. And the numbers continue to go down from there, which you can tell just from the numbers of businesses that run. Scary, isn't it? I want to put these benchmarks in front so that you can see that doing it the way most people do it doesn't take them where they really wanted to go when they started. And that was the point I want to make, that there is another way to get results better than the average, if you will. Sound good? All right, so let's take another step forward. Let's think about your business. Is your business driving you, or are you driving it? Now, of the businesses I've interacted with over the decades, most of the business owners, in my observation, have been slaves to their business. The business drives them. They are desperately running around. Is it possible to get the business to run without you having to be there? Yes, it just takes a systematic approach, looking at it bigger than most people look at it. And I'm going to share some stories to that effect in a little bit. All right, let's talk about what's your definition of a business. John, you want to go first?
The definition of a business is
What's
an organization or entity, a legal vehicle that creates a product or service at a profit.
Okay, sounds good. Kurt?
Revenue generating machine.
Good, I like that. Jeff?
Planned functioning entity that allows for change.
Okay, fair enough. I tend to define a successful business as a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without the owner having to be there. Which I think coincides with the absentee owner philosophy fairly closely. One of the challenges I like to throw out to my more advanced clients is to set a date for when they can and will take a 3-month vacation without having to announce it to the team, go away and be confident they can come back to a growing, thriving business. Because if they can take 3 months off, they can probably take however much time they ever want to take off, whenever they want. Does that make sense? And one interesting way to set that date is to make the down payment. Now, it doesn't have to be out
so
3
funny.
months.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that, Steve, and it's like, you mean like 3 months off without calling every day and checking in, or like
Yes, sir.
my stomach's flipping upside down. I'm like,
Yes, sir. There is a path. There is a path. You're at a very beginning stage. I wouldn't even put that in front of you. I'm talking about a more advanced business that has a lot in place, and I'll show you what I mean by a lot in place here shortly. But there is a way to get that so that it can be. And if you really want to think about it, think about Tesla, think about Microsoft, think about Apple. You know, are those able to run without the original founder there?
Well, what would happen if their head people, Tim Cook or whoever's running Microsoft now, disappeared for 3 months?
That's a question, isn't it?
What would happen? I mean, I often wonder, sometimes I look at Elon Musk and I think, what happens to Tesla and SpaceX if something were to happen to that guy?
It's an interesting question, isn't it?
You know, it is interesting. I mean, even no matter how big you get, there's still that the founder and the.
There is that. Well, think about General Electric. Where's the founder?
Good point.
Okay. Okay. Let's continue on. Here's a framework. It's a 6-step framework. We're going to talk about each of the steps in some detail. First step is a mastery step. This is a foundational step. This is what permits all that to happen. And by the way, I wouldn't even talk to a business owner about that 3-month vacation without mastery being completely mastered, not partially mastered, but completely mastered. The purpose of mastery is to eliminate the chaos. The second step we call niche. This is for generating predictable cash flow. This is very much a money-making machine stage. This is where the financial core really happens. The third step we call leverage. This is the true systemizing process. This is starting to build real processes and put some technology to it, building people up, starting the teams, getting the teams rolling. The team level is really about building a leadership team that's capable of doing all of the things you do, that's capable of having all of the skills that are needed. In fact, you're looking for people with more skill than you've got in that section. Then we get to this transition to synergy. Synergy is where we have a machine that we can put somebody else in charge of, commonly called a COO or a general manager. This is where you can really start to think about, how do I expand my entity without me being in the day-to-day of this one, because this one runs so well. Franchising can be one path. Chains can be another path. Other investments into synergistic kinds of entities can be another path. These are all possibilities. All of that happens before the owner truly gets to enjoy the results, meaning the financial results and the real free time results, where he can walk away and not be there at all. This is where the founder doesn't have to be there other than as a figurehead. We're going to talk about each of these steps, but I'll just pause right here and give you a chance to ask questions. I know Kurt's got flip-flops going on. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay.
How does someone go about letting go?
It'll be obvious at the right time. I know a bunch of people that try to let go too soon, but there will be a day when the owner's in the way. That's the time to let go. He's holding them back, just being there. There are going to be multiple systems we use to accomplish this. Two of the primary ones, well, what I just showed you is the overall system. Two of the ones that we're going to use is the 5 ways, which we're going to talk about in some detail. That's the financial machine. The other one is a 4 ways, which is a list of strategies and systems that we use as we work our way along. Most of that's going to happen in the leverage, but not all of it. We're going to start introducing stuff right in mastery. So we're going to start mastery. Everybody ready to start mastery? All right. There are 4 basic categories of activity in mastery: destination mastery, money mastery, time mastery, delivery mastery. And I can tell you of all of the businesses I've worked with, they get tangled up in at least one, if not more, of these. I have seen delivery mastery hold people back for years because they had it all in their head and weren't comfortable putting it on paper. Got to get comfortable putting stuff on paper. We're going to start with destination mastery. Where'd you go? Where are you going? Would you go on a vacation trip without having a plan? Why would you run your business without having a plan? So it's a case of sitting down and asking yourself, by the way, that's probably the fire sale approach to business. And I unfortunately have known too many of those cases. Destination mastery. There's no use going out to build a business if you don't know where you want to go. And COVID or no COVID, the destination doesn't have to change. And I'm using COVID. It could be the economy. It could be anything. The destination doesn't have to change. Only the path has to change. The way we go about it. I heard an interview of the 2 owners of a fine dining restaurant in Seattle way back 2020, probably late 2020. And they were talking about how they adapted to COVID. Obviously, they shut down initially. Wasn't a good plan. They reopened as a hamburger stand, selling hamburgers out of their restaurant at the window, so nobody had to come in. Then they had the inspiration to open up a movie theater projection process in their parking lot, and they sold hamburgers to the people that came to watch the movies. That was their second try. It got more traffic, worked better, but it still wasn't bringing back all of their fine dining cooks. So they evolved another step, is they reopened selling fine dining meals to people watching movies in their parking lot. They had to come to the window to pick it up, or they would bring it out to the car. These were all evolutions that they used, but that allowed them to bring nearly all of their employees back. That was what got them running in a way that they could still keep payroll running and actually make payment on the space that they were using. They weren't getting rich. They, the owners, were not making a whole lot of money, but they were able to keep their team employed and keep operating. That was sitting down and looking at a new path and keeping the destination in mind. These are little ways to start thinking about what can I change about what I'm doing. Kurt, the story you told about evolving to working with boomers and telling their story and sharing their history, that's an evolution of your thinking. And that's exactly the kind of thing, is getting creative. What strengths do I have? What not strengths do I have? How do I use my strengths most effectively? And are there not strengths I need to acquire? Acquire can be any number of ways. Doesn't always have to be learned. So there are ways to go about this. It's a matter of being creative.
That reminds me of Morton's Steakhouse here in Reston, which was one of the last restaurants to get involved with a happy hour. They previously didn't do that, but they ran these their best liquor and stuff running right there at from 4 to 6. That set up the people for fine dining to come in a little bit early. So they were one of the last to let go of that, I think, but they're well into it now, and they don't advertise.
Yeah. This
Only
is
the
about
regulars find it.
this is about evolving. Don't stay married to one way to do stuff. Test and measure, test and measure, test and measure. Which gets us kind of to money mastery. Having a business is all about money, spending money, making money. If we want to manage something, meaning if we want to improve what we've got, we have got to measure it, and we've got to understand it. We've got to understand where it comes from. We have to understand where it goes to. That makes it all really about budgeting and reporting. And that means looking at the money reports at least monthly. And some of them you may need to look at weekly, so that you know how progress towards a goal is going. So it's a constant process of setting a plan up, following the plan, looking at how well it works, what doesn't work well enough, what do I need to change? So having some skill at understanding where the money comes from, where the money goes to. This is kind of an economic tool that many people use. Don't try to understand it right here, right now, but it is a case of understanding where is your break-even point. That's what the BE designation is a break-even point. Your profit is going to be on the right side of that. You're going to have a max capacity, or it says here max utilization with the resources you've got. What happens if I change the resource profile that I've got so that I can go further, and then further again, and then further again? So this becomes an ever-evolving process of understanding where's the money? Where does it come from? Where does it go to? How do I best utilize it to get the best results for what I'm trying to achieve? You don't have to be an accountant, but you do have to learn how to read accounting reports and use them constructively. That takes us to time mastery. And this is kind of a case of understanding your most expensive resource, which is your time. You can always get more money. It's a little tricky to go out and buy a bag of time. So we have to use our time very, very carefully. We want to make it as efficient as possible. It's incredible the numbers of owners that I've run into that are too busy doing work to send out invoices, and too busy doing work to collect on invoices. How does that help them make money? But I see it all the time. There's an entire list of things, knowing your key performance indicators, KPIs or key performance indicators. What are they in your business? There are always KPIs. I'm going to show a few here in a few minutes, but they are just a beginning. They are the very high level summary reports. Billable hours can be in a service business, that's a really important KPI. How many billable hours am I getting out every day, every week, every month, as compared to my goal? And what do I have to do to improve on that? So these are all questions that lead us to positive cash flow activities. So we have to be constantly looking at that. Looking at our time strategically. There are some activities that are just plain flat, not important and not urgent, but we find ourselves in the middle of them, and they can be designated a distraction and should be avoided during high intensity periods of time. What are your important periods of time during the day for customer interaction? There are activities that are urgent, but not so important. These might be demands by other people. These can get us to feeling a delusion of importance when it's not really taking us towards the goal that we've got for our business. There is stuff that's urgent and important that we just have to do. I like to joke about doing taxes, doing them in February versus doing them in April. If we do them in April, they are urgent and important, and they take up time that could be better spent in other ways. If we do them in February, we can do them in low intensity periods of time when we don't have a lot of need to be interacting with clients. Which takes us to understanding what are the important aspects of how we use our time and learning how to schedule them so that we do them at the right time before they become a panic. So it's a case of understanding our use of time. What are the activities we have to do to make positive cash flow, as opposed to have to do that doesn't bring us cash flow? So these are things that we have to get into, is how do we use our time most effectively? And that gets us to delivery mastery. Now, we like to think of delivering consistently as a key component of success, so that when we get a referral, for example, the person referred already knows from the person that introduced us what's going to happen. What's the process going to look like? What result, what outcome can they expect? That is what gives them the confidence to come back to us again and again and again and again, or to refer us at all. And it can be a process of sitting down and writing out flowcharts. Now, this is a bit of an unconventional approach to writing flowcharts. This particular flowchart was written for a home improvement company. And it was an external home improvement company, siding and doors and windows kind of stuff. When we mapped out what they were doing, and they had an idea of what they thought they were doing. When we mapped it out, there were a couple of steps missing. We added those steps in, we scripted some things. The salesman went from about 450,000 of sales to 1.2 million in sales over the next year. This is how important that step can be. And I actually like to do this step in conjunction with time mastery, because you have to understand what are all of the steps you need to do and how do we schedule them into the week and into the day. I think they're interactive. We have to work back and forth between those. The lower part of that just happens to outline what are the systems that we use during the course of that process, and then what are the KPIs that we use during the course of that process. That's why it's a bit unconventional. Most people just do a flow chart. I've thrown in a couple of extra things here so that it's a more useful collection of information. And we did this one a little bit by department in this case. So that gives us more power to think about it. Again, it can be done in a very simple way, or it can be done in this more complex kind of way. Both work. It depends on what works for your particular situation. By the way, that home improvement company now has an 8-month backlog, which he's finding is a problem. He's losing jobs because his backlog is too long. So we have a different set of issues to work on today. Again, delivery mastery in that side too. Questions? I'm going to stop there. Were there any questions left from what I just shared? Is that all pretty clear? Make sense?
Do some of these change where you have to go back to that stage?
Oh, yes. Yes, we learn new stuff all the time. We go back, we fix it. Kurt?
So I've been operating in a micro business mindset where I've created a JOB for myself, right? And so I'm trading dollars for hours. There's only so many hours in the year. There's only so many jobs I could do. I could increase my pricing and I can increase my value perception and get some new clientele. But even if I were to maximize that, I'm still going to eventually hit a ceiling without building the team, going through the process of creating a bigger business. Is there a different or a more appropriate model for the business owner that's creating a JOB for themselves? Is that an exercise in futility? Is that a stupid idea? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, I've operated that way, and I kind of see some folly in that. Have I wasted some time? I made it through. I'm still here. The mortgage is paid. The kids are fed, but I'm not really making any money.
Yeah. The answer is that you asked a judgmental question, and I would never want to get into a judgmental mindset. Did you waste your time? That depends entirely on what you really wanted from the time you invested. Remember, the most uncontrollable piece of this is how much time you have. You only have so much time to work with. How much do you want for that investment in time? If you want significantly more, then you want to change the model that you're in. If you're satisfied with what you're making, you have a choice. You can stick with what you're doing and keep getting what you always got, or you can drastically change. So let me go at this from the point of view, if your national scale is really important to you, if having a business that can run without you having to be there is important to you, then you probably want to change your mindset. If continuing to get what you've always gotten is more important to you, then keep doing it the way you're doing it. This is where what is in your passion is most important. Where I see people get tangled up also is the craft person, and you're kind of in that category, who has an art in a way that they really, 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 really enjoy engaging in. And they can get torn with this feeling of, I have to build a business. No, they don't have to build a business. Or they can build a business and hire themselves back out as an artist. I worked with a massage therapy business several years ago. Jeff mentioned Leslie. It was actually at the same time that I was working with Leslie, but a different person who had started, when I first met her, she had 4 part-time therapists plus herself. She was doing about 20 to 25 massages a week, which was terribly exhausting, physically exhausting. And she was subletting some space from somebody else and just barely getting by. She was a single mom raising 1 child. Within 2 years, She had 14 full-time therapists, her own studio with, I think, 7 rooms in it. And she was working about 8 or 10 therapies a week because she was working on friends that she had known for years and wanted to work with. She had gone as far as she wanted to go at that time. Selling was not in her mind. So she managed to continue doing her craft because she wanted to continue doing her craft. She stopped advancing along this process because that was her plan for continuing to be a therapist. She could have kept going. She didn't. But that was a choice that she made.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's a lot of approaches that an owner can choose along the way. What's important to you? That's the most important consideration. Does that help answer the question?
It does. It still comes back to me deciding what do I want. And
Correct.
that's been one of the hardest things for me to answer for a decade, for literally for 10, 12 years.
Mhm.
What do you really want to do? Well, what do you really want? What do you really want?
Mhm. How hungry are you? You could build your business in a way that allows you to be home with the kids or the kids' kids all the time, and the business is making money for you. You could do that. That's well within the capacity of the kind of business you've chosen. So could John. You both have businesses that would allow you to go there. But you have to choose, because if you don't make that choice, you don't have to extend yourself. If you do make that choice, you're going to get out, you're going out of your comfort zone. And that's where it's at. So I'm glad you asked that question that way. This is about it. This is a comfort zone question, not a judgment. So far, does that help?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Phase 2, step 2, niche. I would define niche as an area that you can operate in with no price competition. What's that mean? Well, I'm going to show you a graphical representation of that in a minute. But this is a tool, this is a mindset of finding out who's your real target market that allows you to do what you do without fighting to be the lowest price. That's really what we're looking for. We back it up with a unique selling proposition that really defines your niche and put a guarantee around it so that a customer can know what to expect from you. And you take the risk away of their expectations so they know what they're going to get. Now, that graphical representation, this is a perceptual map. That's literally what this is called, is a perceptual map. Happens to be for soft drinks. The parameters here are high caffeine versus low caffeine and high sugar versus low sugar. So you can think about what are variables in your individual market. The ovals are clusters of people, basically customers, and there is a fair amount of consistency on who fits into those clusters. Males in a particular grouping, females in a particular grouping, people in a particular grouping, other people in a particular grouping. So these ovals are clusters of buyers. This particular cluster seems to be served by 4 products. And what's amusing to me is it's two companies cannibalizing themselves with two products each. It's kind of a strange way to serve it, but there are 4 products serving this particular grouping. There is 1 product serving this grouping. There is a product trying to fit between these two, which means it serves them both poorly. There's nobody trying to serve this group. Coke and Pepsi seem to be trying to service this group. They don't necessarily appear to be doing it well, but they're there. Where are your niches? Where are the people you serve best that nobody else can serve as well? And you can help them see with your marketing why you're the best for them. And this is kind of a case of understanding who your market really is. It's not just baby boomers. That's too broad. Baby boomers, who? And this is a case of maybe doing surveys, getting out and interviewing, talking to people, learning about, doing research about the people that fit a particular interest that you can serve best. And you can own that market, unlike this one, where we've got a whole bunch of people cannibalizing each other, probably owning another group that's large enough to fit where you're trying to go. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
That's a niche. John, does this stuff help?
Oh yeah, it's very good. I mean, you know, sometimes I find, and this might be just personal to me, I need to be told something 10 times and I hear it 9 times and okay, that sounds nice. That sounds nice. And then I hear it the 10th time and it's, I
it goes
see how
click.
that comes together.
Yeah, it goes click. The story I told this morning about some of the vendors that I have known, and that particular one out in Iowa, has been nagging at the back of my head for years, but I never told it. And so that it dawned on me all of a sudden, how many of the business owners have I met that are doing exactly the same thing he neglected to do, is failing to write down processes. So if he felt he needed to turn it over to his son, at least his son would know where to go on how to do stuff, how to prioritize stuff. And if I think back on the businesses that I've led and the businesses that I've coached, that is a core piece to making a business successful, is being able to sit down and document the key, at least the key processes, best all the processes, but you start with the most important ones and work from there. And then you find out that they're made up of sub processes, and then you map them out. And you can build a real manual, and you can hand off the pieces of the manual to the right individuals at the right time, and you've got a basis to hold them accountable. And you both know what the expectations are. And if they violate those expectations, we can have a different conversation, not necessarily a punitive conversation. It's just a retraining conversation, reprioritizing kind of conversation.
Yeah.
People get scared that this is a confrontation sometimes. Well, no, it's not. It's just a retraining process. But if you don't have a basis for it, how do you do it? I'm thinking of 2 or 3 advanced businesses that I'm working with right now that are stuck because they didn't map their processes out, and they're still fighting it. It's not the way that it takes them outside the comfort zone. Just what Kurt asked about a minute ago. Comfort zone. All set?
Yes, sir. In fact, I was just listening in on what you were saying. The last thing I wrote down here was, what is the Access Studios process? Who do I best serve?
Yep.
Find your unique selling position.
Yep.
You know, it's odd. You know, I work with companies for years on developing their unique selling position, asking them what makes you different. Just yesterday, I was shooting a video of a company, and I spent the last week trying to get them to write out, what are we going to cover today? What are we going to cover at the shoot? What are we going to cover at the shoot? And then the night before, we're just going to fly by the seat of our pit. And then they showed up, and unfortunately they didn't have a lot to say. So I had to sit there and draw all this stuff out of them. But if I take that same approach and then turn it towards myself, I have a much harder time doing it.
Yeah. And what you just defined is the role a business coach fulfills is exactly that. Just what you just said is to put you on the spot gently, to take you out of the comfort zone one step at a time, so that your comfort zone gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You just defined my job, actually. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we're going to talk about leverage, marketing leverage. This is really about making money. We're going to get into the machine process of making money. And this is a chassis kind of thinking process that can fit any business I have come across so far, one way or another. It starts with a mentality of test and measure. Your business is your laboratory. You are running a science experiment. Every single thing you do is an experiment to see how well it works. And part B of that is, how do I make it work better? Now, you can't do everything at once, but you can take data for everything, and then you can go back and evaluate data at a later date. Now, what we're going to talk about is a formula. We call it the 5 ways. And where we go with that is, nearly every business I've ever met knows how many customers they've got, or at least they can find a list. They can find out what their revenue is. If nothing else, they can go to their last tax report. And generally, they know how much they take home in their pocket. And I'm saying that a little bit tongue in cheek, because I've actually met owners that can't answer those 3 questions, at least not without going to look it up. But these are things that should be obvious to every business owner. Now, what we're going to do is talk about this. Those 3 things are the most important things to a business owner, but they are very difficult to put discrete strategies in place by themselves. So what we've done is we've broken that up into chunks. And yes, you can break it up further. This is just a starting point. What we look at is the number of customers is really the number of leads times your conversion rate. And Kurt, in a marketing philosophy, you could look at this, yes, but then there can be numbers of impressions before we have numbers of leads. Yes, that's absolutely correct. We can continue to break this down depending on where we're going. But the core of it is numbers of leads times conversion rate develops the number of customers. The number of customers times the number of transactions per customer times the average dollar sale is the dollar of revenue. We can do strategies for each of those blue variables to increase those numbers. Similarly, profit is really revenue times an efficiency factor. We happen to call that efficiency factor profit margin. Now, under some circumstances, and service businesses in particular, I'll break profit margins down further to gross profit and then net profit. But the core of it starts with the thinking of profit margins. We're going to put numbers in this so you can see how the arithmetic works. So don't worry about that part. So does that make sense so far? How
Yes,
this
sir.
works? Okay. Now here is an example business, and we're going to play with this business. 4,000 leads with a 25% conversion rate is 1,000 customers.
Yep.
1,000 customers, an average of 2 transactions each, and an average of $100 per sale. Now that could be 12 transactions for some and 1 for others, but an average 2. Same thing with the dollar sale. It could be $10 to some and $1,000 to others, but an average of 100 gets us to a $200,000 revenue. 25% efficiency factor gets us to a $50,000 personal income to the owner. Any questions about the arithmetic? All right, so let's walk through this. Let's pretend we're going to take this business and we're going to take each of those 5 variables and do strategies to increase each one separately. So we got 5 different sets of things going on simultaneously. So first of all, we're going to increase the number of leads 10%. How could we do that? You guys, all 3 of you guys are pretty experienced in this. What are some things that you could do that you're not doing today?
Change your marketing. You could buy some lists. You could partner with some people. Or
Good, good. John?
you're only looking for 10%. You can do a lot to get 10%.
Yes, you could do a lot to get 10%. John?
And just better follow up on the conversion. I mean, there are a lot of things you could go on. You could probably mastermind 100 things for each category.
I've got a list here of 85 core strategies, and each one of those could probably be done 12 different ways. Yes, exactly. So 4,000 becomes 4,400, doesn't it? Now, conversion rate. You're selling a particular way with a particular set of sales skills. Could you increase those sales skills?
Yeah.
Could you have better follow-up, as John just talked about? Okay. So we could go 10% up and go to 27.5, because 27.5 is 10% over 25, not 35%, just 25, right? Okay. How many customers have I got now? 1,210, 21% increase, right? All right. So I've got 2 transactions average. Could I invite more customers back more effectively in a variety of ways and increase from 2 to 2.2? Can you think of some ways to do that in your business you're not doing right now or not doing enough of? Okay. What about average dollar sale? If you were doing a good job promoting your uniqueness, could you increase your price? If you got a niche, yeah. Could you upsell stuff? So could you get to 110 in this particular case? What has your revenue just gone to? Almost 300,000.
Wow.
That's a 46% increase. Similarly, could you increase the efficiencies of the way you're doing stuff, maybe by process flow charts, maybe by better time management? Could you increase your efficiencies by 10% and go to 27.5? Now the owner's taking home $80,000. See how this works? See how this game works?
Yes, sir.
We've just changed from a craft to, and I'm going to introduce this as a machine in a minute. We've changed this from a craft to a process. This is a process because we can do this year in and year out and year in and year out. We can make this a forever process if we want to, till we run out of market. Suppose we did this for several years so that we got to 100% increase over the original numbers. Might be 3 years, might be 12 years, but we did this year after year after year. Could we increase the number of leads 100% over time?
Sure.
So we're at 8,000 leads. Could we increase our conversion rate over time and get better at selling and get to 50%? How many customers do we have now?
4,000.
That's right. Could we do a much better job of attracting clients and providing services that would attract them back, not 2 times, but 4 times? Might be redesigning what we offer a little bit, might be adding to our product line, but we could do something that increases that number, whatever the baseline is, 100%. Similarly, with the average dollar sale over time, could we be doing a better job of providing things, services, products that would bring us up 100%? It's our new revenue. Can we make this a machine? If we look at it well, there is a home improvement company I worked with a few years ago, several years ago, who used this very thinking process to increase his business from 700,000 to 3.2 million. And that's a coincidence of the 3.2 here in a 3-year period. The core of his focus was this top line up here, although we worked at these down here as well, and several other businesses as well. Similarly, if we worked at our efficiencies, could we increase our efficiency? I don't know that a 50% efficiency is viable in most businesses, but it can be in service businesses. That'll take us to a profit of 1.6 million. How'd you feel about making even half of that? Now, by the way, the multiple on that's starting to get attractive. Now you've got money to start hiring people to do more things. Okay, this is how we go about a process. Kurt, you asked a question early on about how do I know when to let go of stuff? This is a heck of a good time to let go of stuff. A $200,000 business can be done often by one person. Most of the time, a $3.2 million business cannot. So someplace in here, you've had to leverage more people into the organization. And this chart actually becomes a planning tool to know more about when you need to add people in and roughly what parts of the company need more work. If one person can run a $200,000 business and manage 4,000 leads, he probably needs some help to manage 8,000 leads. He probably needs some help to sell. He probably needs some help on the production side. These are the clues. And if you're doing the budgeting and planning financially along the way, it's easy to know when it's time to add a person in. Then we get to leverage. This is all about saving yourself time, energy, and money. There are 4 basic categories of stuff that allows you to systemize more effectively. One of the biggest points of leverage is people, and doing a good job of educating them about what they need to do and what you need them for. What makes them successful? How do they know they are successful? Is it because they feel successful, or because they have discrete KPIs that help them know when the results that they're producing are the right ones? Systems and technology are obvious. We're in the technology era. Delivery and distribution. How can you deliver your products or services more and more and more efficiently? And then, of course, the feedback mechanisms of accounting, testing, and measuring. Those are feedback mechanisms that allow you to know how well stuff works. There are 9 steps to systemizing a business. I actually have 15 books I provide my clients. That's one of them. Not the first one, but it's one of them. It's about how to systemize in a generalistic kind of way. It gives people some vocabulary and helps them think through ways to think about it. The reason I'm showing this list is I want you to look through the list. Where is how to? People always jump to how to first. But how do you put down the how to without the context to have the confidence that the way you're teaching people is the right way, without them going off the reservation, doing it their own way? If you've got the context of the vision, the mission, a culture, goals, organization chart, positional contracts, KPIs, if you don't have those contexts, it's very, very hard for them to know that they're on track or not. And then what's your management process? What's your management system to keep all of that going in the right direction? Many people skip the management process because it feels like confrontation. It's not. It's just about understanding what works for this business and the vision that we're trying to create.
These in sequence?
Yes,
Steps, they're like in sequence.
yes. Yes, this is not just a random list. People try to make it a random list and go to number 8 first. And oftentimes we wind up doing 8 over and over and over and over again until we get really committed to doing the other 7. And then we can get 8 and get zeroed in much more closely. Now we get to really where the leverage is. This is where stuff gets really, really interesting. People don't like having teams. And one of the reasons they don't like them, Tom Peters talked about, most employees are motivated, energetic, committed, enthusiastic, and loyal, except for the 8 hours a day they work for you. On one hand, this is a leadership comment. How well are we leading people? But it's very, very difficult to lead people if you don't have a good management process in place first. And that's why I keep talking about we have to have a measurement system in place so people can know when stuff works and when stuff doesn't work, so that they can know where they fit in the overall scheme of things. The way most businesses start, and I think both you guys will, all 3 of you guys will relate to this one. Most businesses start with an owner serving customers. And they get very, very comfortable serving customers, and it all gets in their head. How do we find them? How do we sell to them? How do we serve them? How do we keep them satisfied? So it becomes a very tight process, and it's all in the owner's head. What happens when he gets really, really busy? He has to hire somebody, doesn't he? So he hires somebody and he expects that person to know exactly what he knows because he hired him for his skill. He knows exactly what he knows. He does it exactly the right way. And it never works. He always winds up putting out fires. So he's constantly finding himself redoing and redoing and redoing. And yet, to keep the cash flow moving, he has to keep up with doing his normal load of serving customers. And I see business owners all the time feeling like they're running in circles, feeling like they're juggling balls all the time, going and going and going and going, and they burn out and they drop out. I know an electrician that I spoke with several years ago who had built a business to 18 mechanics. Only he himself never let go of being a mechanic. With 18 mechanics, he still felt obligated to be out being the mechanic, being the best mechanic. And what happened is he felt so burned out that he started dropping people out of his team, and he got back to himself, one other person, a single truck, and the two of them ran around in the truck from job to job to job to job because he was burned out. And there was no way he could see himself doing anything but being the mechanic. Now, he could be the mechanic. He was making enough money that he felt he could make a good living, but he wasn't making the wealth he could have made with 18 people if he'd built it out as well as he could have. The real key to this game is to spend the owner to spend his time, energy, and effort training team to be him, actually hiring people that he can train, not for their skill, but for their attitude of being trainable. Train them to serve customers the way he wants them served, so that the customers get so happy with the work that they're doing that they serve the business by continuing to do business with the business, and the business takes care of the owner with dividends. So that's kind of a philosophical angle on how this can work. So we're looking at it like it's a stock business now. Does that make sense? That probably fits John's thinking process fairly well, because I think you've got, if I recall, John, you've got businesses in that arena in some ways right now. There are 6, and I could propose even a 7th key to a truly winning team. The strong leadership part is not about being mean and angry and yelling and screaming. The strong leadership is about having a really good vision and making all decisions congruent with the vision. That means you have to have a clear vision, but you have a very clear vision, a very clear culture, a very clear mission, so that we're all on the same page with the same expectations. Building a common goal. Common means that the team has to participate in setting the goal. From the mission, from the vision. They understand the vision, they're working the vision, and we set how much we can achieve this year, this quarter, this month together. We have rules of how we're going to work together, rules of the game, that how we're going to work together with each other. Part of this can be organization chart. Part of this is going to be positional contracts, stuff that we talked about in the systemizing process. We actually set the systemizing process up to facilitate this. Action plan, that's where the organization chart comes in, and the flow charts, who does what by when. At a certain point, as everybody's reaching a stage that they've been trained, we've got to let them take risks. How did we learn? We learned by trying stuff, didn't we? We've got to let them learn by trying stuff. What kind of results did they get? How did that compare with the targets? What do we do about it when it doesn't meet the target? What do we do about it when it exceeds the target? That's what we're looking for. How do we exceed the targets? And then at some point, the owner wants 100% commitment and involvement from the team members. But to earn that, he's got to include them 100% in the business decision-making. And there is the key right there to being able to step away, because as he earns that 100% involvement and has them 100% included in the decision-making, and they're successful at it, what's the business need him for? I'll throw that out as a question.
They don't.
Where does that leave the owner?
On a beach.
Huh, making money. Terrible thought, huh?
The four of us mokes on a beach is a terrible thought right there. If you add to that image Speedos, it's a horrible thought right there.
That one's got a problem. Too much information.
Yes, sir.
All right, so the key to this game is winning teams need to know how to get the right people on the right bus, in the right seat, going to the right destination. So where is the destination? That brings us to synergy and results. This is where you put your general manager in place or COO in place, and you get the heck out of the way. You set the goals, you set the overarching strategies, and harness them and inspire them to deliver. You become the figurehead. Can that work in your business?
What are the roadblocks?
Comfort zone is the biggest consistent roadblock is comfort zone, and the other consistent roadblock is a clear goal. I want to get to here by this time frame. Those are the two key roadblocks. The rest of it is just an open-minded eagerness to learn to do stuff in ways you're not doing now. The way Richard Branson put it is that if you can learn to run one business successfully, and we've just defined a successful, there's no reason you can't run any number of businesses at the same time. The principles are all the same, using exactly the same framework that I just showed you. Principles are all the same. There are specifics that are different, but they can all be done. And you don't have to be there after a period of time. So I'm going to make a guarantee. 12 months from today, you will arrive. The real question is where? Will you still be a slave to your business? Or will you be on a path someplace else? And by the way, I will guarantee it's not a 12-month journey to get completely done. It's a multi-year journey. But the question is are you on the way? Or are you still doing it the way you've always done it? One of the clients I'm working with right now is a mortgage loan officer. I'm actually working with a couple of them, but one of them I've been working with for about 4 years. When I started with him, he was in the 30 to 35 million a year bracket. And it was him and his wife. Yes, they're part of a large corporation. It was him and his wife, and he was getting to use a little bit of a third person's time for a couple of minor steps that he was sharing with somebody else. He and his wife felt that their maximum capacity together was 40 million. And so when we decided to work together and I asked him to set goals, he set the goal at 40 million. And I actually just interviewed him, and the interview is posted on LinkedIn if you're interested. We kind of joked with that, and I yawned. I did a drama yawn at 40 million. And so he conceded to 50 million. Well, we didn't make 50 million that year. We only made 47 million. And he was disappointed he didn't make 50, but I had to ask him, how did that compare with 40? Okay, point made. So we set a new goal for the second year of 70 million. Well, we didn't make 70 million. We made 59 million. How does 59 million compare with 40 million? And oh, by the way, it was still him and his wife. A lot of this was about marketing, and a lot of this was about processes. How did they do the work that they did? And we took them way the heck outside of their comfort zone. The third year was 2020. 2020 was kind of a strange year for the mortgage industry. He only hit, after we set a goal for 80 million, he hit 153. Him and his wife. No different resource pool than him and his wife that had felt they were maxed out at 40. Now, this was a lot about how did they do what they did. Now, I'll tell you right now, the two of them put in a boatload of hours, more hours than they ever conceded. But they discovered that together they could do 153 million, which, by the way, on a personal income basis was well over $1 million. I won't go to where it is, but it was well over $1 million. Last year, we did not do anything like that. We only hit 120 something million because the market had changed. Now we're back to doing marketing. We didn't do any marketing in 2020 to speak of once COVID hit, because it was all about refis. And the refis, he had enough of a pool of referral partners and past clients. We didn't really need to do very much in marketing, and he didn't have time to do very much in marketing. Now we're back into doing marketing. His goals are running in the 120 million bracket. We've added a person in. He's changing his ways of doing things even further, and we're getting him focused on doing the things that bring new business in. So it's a matter of affecting their work processes and their time priorities. And they are finding that they can get whatever results they want. Their destiny is in their hands by doing things differently. He is well on the way of being on that beach. He has also gone and found a financial planner to help him put money away. And he has a retirement plan in place, and he is building a book of business that he's going to be able to sell. So he is, in a way, building a business he could sell. And now we're just working out the clock, keeping him focused on outcomes, not tasks. So every other week we work on processes and results. So I'm going to get to the sales pitch part here. There's two directions you can go. You can go on your own, the way you've been going, or you can get massive results more quickly. Anybody interested in how we might go there? Generally, there are three ways I work with people. These are three different ways of looking at price points. Mentor Club, which allows me a low price point so that I can get people in with very small businesses because it doesn't cost all that much, and we can start working through the very process I just showed. There is also 2 levels of one-to-one mentoring, either bi-weekly or weekly. Basically, it's coaching on a very personal basis, one-on-one. The one-to-one bi-weekly achieves results much more quickly than the group coaching does, but it's at a higher price point. The weekly goes much faster than that, but again, it's at a higher price point. Generally, I suggest usually, and it all depends on circumstances. I generally suggest people under 350,000 in revenue into the Mentor Club group. I generally suggest the people under $1 million and above 350 for the biweekly program. And I generally suggest the people over $1 million for the weekly. Is that hard and fast? No, depends on circumstances. All depends on how fast the person wants to go. And what's a reasonable budget without getting them in deep trouble? So the last thing I want to do is get them into deep trouble. So that gives you kind of a sense of how I might go about working with people in some sort of systematic way. We work through the processes I have just shown. What I'm offering is a 1-hour strategy session, free, based on the stuff we've talked about. And we'll take a look at it through the lens of your specific business. I would send a questionnaire and ask you guys to fill it out, which helps me know a little bit more specific stuff about your business so that we can focus in on the bits that are relevant to you most quickly. And everybody that will take me up on that, I will share that particular graphic, which really is the 6 steps that I just walked through. And each of these blocks is really providing some idea of questions that might ask in order to answer that. That is not the most comprehensive version of that, but it's the most comprehensive version I can get on one sheet of paper. So I'll stop. Your turn. What questions have you got? Any questions about the content that we talked about? No? Well,
It's a lot,
obviously,
though. It's a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
implementing all that. I mean, it's great framework and great everything, but the heavy lifting is in implementing that, and then everybody's business has their own complicated things. I mean, it's just running the engine to get to. I mean, I admire it. The guys that sell, pens, to get to 10 million is woof. It's a lot of pens.
My job is to guide you through that process and help you with the implementation. So what I hate, I've actually employed consultants in the past. And what I hate about consultants is they do a report, give you an analysis with recommendations and an invoice, and it's all in your shoes to figure out what to do next. My job as a coach is to be with you all the way through that process. In fact, it's better, I'm more successful when I guide you through the analysis rather than me do the analysis. And that's where I get to ask the dumb questions and we get to brainstorm. And each of you guys has experience, so brainstorming can be really, really powerful. We've seen a lot of things. We've got a good menu. We can see ways around stuff to make the heavy lifting less heavy. And John, what I like about your situation is you've got people you can delegate to. And that is where some of the lifting should really happen. Kurt's up as a tougher place.
Yep. It's all challenging. There are different levels of the mountain. You're still on the mountain though. It's brutal, and it's so much of it is mindset of every time you slide back down, you just have to, think it's nothing but a thing. Just keep going.
It's just data.
Yeah.
It's just data, and you're absolutely correct. And by the way, I think it was Jeff asked the question about roadblocks. I'm going to entertain you with one of the key roadblocks. Failing to celebrate successes. We get all tangled up with the challenges, the failures, the difficulties, the slide backs. We need to train ourselves to celebrate even the little successes so that we focus on more successes rather than the burnout, the seeds for burnout. That actually is a piece of the mindset. Does that help? I'm going to go back to that mortgage loan officer. The second year when he hit 59 million, one of his homework assignments that I gave him was to take his wife out to a celebratory dinner. No, he didn't make 70 million, but he made a heck of a lot more than 40. I made him go out and get dinner at the fanciest restaurant he could find. And that has set the pace to keeping them going since then. It is focusing them on the successes, not the struggles. And that doesn't mean we don't talk about struggles. We do. All right. So I'm going to ask if you've enjoyed this. Say something. LinkedIn would be great. Google would be great. Brad Sugars, who's the founder of this, you know you've made a great decision when it either brings up fear or excitement. And Jim Rohn, never wish your life were easier, wish you were better. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And that's what I will leave you with, is that quote right there. I want to thank you guys very much for joining me, indulging in my stories.
Thanks, Steve. Great job today.
Thank you very much, Kurt. You guys have a great week. Bye-bye.
You guys.
Steve.